All right, so today we're going to talk about a promise. It's a story that's got everything: ambition, some pretty serious division, and just a flat-out, relentless fight for respect. We're diving into the dramatic birth of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. You probably know it as the MEAC. And believe me, the struggle it took just to get off the ground, it was monumental.
So check out this newspaper headline from 1981. It says, MEAC fulfills commitment to progress. I mean, that pretty much says it all, right? This was a decade in the making, a decade of just trying to survive, let alone succeed. But it begs the question, what was that commitment? What was the promise they were trying to fulfill? Because, to really get why this was such a huge victory, you got to understand the battle they went through to get there.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock. We're going back to 1970. For a long time, if you were a big-name HBCU on the East Coast, you were probably competing in one conference, the CIAA. It was the conference. But you had this group of schools, really ambitious schools, who started to feel like, hey, we're destined for something bigger. They wanted a bigger stage. And they came to a pretty radical conclusion. The only way to get there was to leave, to break away and build something from the ground up.
And they didn't waste any time. I mean, they moved fast. By December of 1970, it's official. The MEAC is born. Bam. Just like that. The very next year, they've got their first commissioner, the legendary Dr. Leroy Walker, and they're already playing their first football season. Their big, ambitious plan, it was officially a go.
But look, this was never just about starting another conference. No way. The founders had a laser-focused goal. And honestly, a lot of people thought it was impossible. They were chasing what one of them called a higher promised land of collegiate athletics. And what did that mean? It meant getting to the absolute top tier of the NCAA. Because back then, that top level, what we all know as Division I today, that was the only way. It was the only way to get on national TV, to get those big tournament payouts, and to earn real, mainstream respect.
And if you want to understand just how big they were dreaming, just listen to this quote from Dr. Thomas Frazier, who was the president of Morgan State at the time. He said they wanted to become the Ivy League academically of black institutions. I mean, think about that. This tells you right away it was never just about football or basketball. They saw this as building a beacon for both academic and athletic excellence. They wanted to be on the national stage, period. So what was the actual game plan? Well, it was bold for sure, but it was also super clear. First, get that university division status, which again is what we call Division I now. And how do you do that? You start scheduling games against predominantly white schools. You try to recruit white athletes to come play for you. And the big prize, you earn those automatic bids to the NCAA tournaments. This was a full-court press for national integration and recognition.
Okay, but let's be real. When you have a dream that big, you're going to hit some major roadblocks. It's just inevitable. And for the MEAC, the obstacles came fast and furious, and they came from everywhere. From outside the conference, sure, but also from right inside their own community.
So what was the first big hurdle? Just getting people to know who they were. It sounds simple, but it was huge. The commissioner, Leroy Walker, he said it himself. Their biggest challenge was a problem of identity. Nobody knew what the MEAC was. They were the new kids on the block, starting from absolute scratch, all while trying to build a name for themselves in the shadow of the CIAA, which had been around forever.
And yeah, the pressure wasn't just coming from the outside, not even close. Get this, just 2 years in, the whole thing almost fell apart from the inside. One of the founding schools, Morgan State, announced they were leaving. And why? It was all over a fight about money, about how to split the cash from a huge game they played against Grambling at Yankee Stadium. It was a massive sign that this new conference had some serious cracks in its foundation, and the whole dream was in danger of collapsing.
And this really gets to the heart of the conflict that was tearing through the HBCU community at the time. You had two camps. On one side, you had the MEAC founders, who were like, look, if we want national prominence, we have to do this. This split is essential. But on the other side, you had folks who were loyal to the CIAA, and they were scared. They thought this was going to splinter and weaken HBCU sports overall. They just didn't buy it. They were like, what good is a major college label if you leave all your fans and traditions behind?
And that skepticism wasn't just whispers. It had a very loud, very respected voice. I'm talking about Clarence Big House Gaines, the legendary coach from Winston-Salem State. This guy was an absolute giant in HBCU sports, and he was not on board. He basically called it a gamble, said they were obsessed with football and chasing a label, and that it was never going to draw the crowds they thought it would. A powerful critique from a powerful figure.
So let's just recap for a second. You've got respected legends from your own community criticizing you. You've got infighting threatening to break the whole thing apart. And on top of all that, the MEAC had to fight another war entirely. The battle for simple, basic respect from the national, mostly white college sports world. I mean, check out this example from 1973. You have Maryland Eastern Shore. They have an incredible season. They go 20-5. By any measure, one of the best teams in the entire country. But when the invites for the big NIT basketball tournament come out, they get passed over. Nothing. The conference said they felt disappointed and snubbed, and you can see why. They were doing the work, winning the games, but they still couldn't get a seat at the big kids' table. And all this was happening while they were running on fumes financially. I mean, they were on a total shoestring budget. The money was so tight that they had to create these companion travel arrangements. Like 2 schools from up north would literally share a bus to travel down south for games. There are stories of teams showing up and finding out their opponents couldn't even afford a motel for the night. The only way they survived was by banding together, pooling every single resource they had just to keep the lights on.
So at this point, you've got to wonder, right? With everything stacked against them, the infighting, the critics, no money, no respect, how on earth could this crazy, ambitious experiment actually work?
And then it happened, the breakthrough. June 1974, the MEAC officially votes to move to NCAA Division I. This was the whole ball game. This was the moment they had been fighting for, the entire reason the conference was created in the first place. They had finally achieved it. They were in.
But you know, getting Division I status is one thing. Actually making it work, making it last, that's a whole different challenge. So the next chapter of this story is all about taking that new status and turning it into real, sustainable success. And you know what? They did it. Even though 3 of the original 7 schools left by the end of the 70s, the MEAC didn't fall apart. Not at all. Instead, they reloaded. In 1979, they added 2 absolute powerhouses from Florida, Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman. That move was huge. It stabilized the whole conference and really secured its future.
So now we flash forward to 1981. It's the conference's 10th anniversary. And you can just imagine the feeling. It's this mix of exhaustion and incredible pride. This quote from an administrator at NCANT, Albert Smith, just nails it. He said, "The commitment people have had to create a new era has made the whole experience rewarding. You can just feel the weight of that decade of struggle and the joy of seeing it all pay off."
So what does that success look like in practical terms, in real dollars and cents? Well, it looks like this number right here, $95,000.
That's how much money Howard University brought home after they got the MEAC's automatic bid to the 1981 NCAA basketball tournament. That's it. That's the dream, right there in black and white. It was that special financial payoff that you only get from playing on the biggest stage. It was exactly what the founders had been fighting for all that time.
And that brings us right back to that newspaper article we started with, because by its 10th anniversary, the MEAC wasn't just hanging on, it was thriving. And that celebration, man, it had to feel like pure vindication. The article says it perfectly. They had been laughed at, told they didn't belong, but now, being in the MEAC meant never having to say you're sorry. They had proved all the doubters, all the skeptics, completely wrong.
At the end of the day, the story of how the MEAC was born is this incredible story about the fight for a seat at the table. It was about saying we deserve national recognition and we deserve a fair shot to compete with the best. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. What does that same fight for visibility, for resources, for respect, what does that look like for HBCUs in college sports today?